Hello and welcome to episode 102 of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancy Street. Is your host Anna here today. Adam will be joining us for the somewhat limited TV and movies, etc. portion towards the end of the episode. If you'd like to follow either of us on social media, we have the links to do so in the description, as well as joining us in the Yancy Street Discord to just chat and, celebrate friendship and whatever. Be sure to check out my YouTube channel for podcast episodes, yes, but also for action figure reviews, and I was trying some stuff with Dreamlight Valley, which I understand that the audio of it was really bad because I really need a new mic. I spent like 20 minutes messing around with it to try and get it to sound decently today, but that's life. It will be happening soon. So you can check out the YouTube channel to see the videos that are posted there. The podcast is available anywhere that podcasts stream. And then you can also check out my website for previous material that was done for the podcast and prior even to me starting the podcast. Today, for me, time is irrelevant, but it is Monday right now for me. So this week we're going to be talking about the tarot card of the week is going to be the Devil card number 15 of the Major Arcana. I have a lot to go over with this one because I feel like it's a fun topic. And I'm also adding a little bit to the pop culture, almost doubling the pop culture segment. We were always talking the Marvel Tarot and the Anime Tarot, and we're going to add the DC Tarot and the Justice League Tarot, which we'll talk about what those two are when we get to that to the tarot part of the show. Not too much in manga, and the comic books is pretty much going to be primarily just stuff that came out this past week. It's a lot of events. We have Night Terror in the fall happening at DC and Marvel respectively. We'll talk a touch on what's coming out this week, which is pretty exciting stuff. And then for news, we are mostly talking about the animation, or rather anime, voice acting and such, and SAG-AFTRA, and how that's kind of a complicated crossover. And animation is probably, anime voice acting is probably going to be one of the next big union strike things, busts, whatever that happens. That they're going to have to face up and handle that situation sooner than later. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, Harley Quinn Season 4, Episode 4, and Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 9, which was a musical episode, and I will not... I did not like that, but we'll talk more about why when we get there. So that's what today's episode pretty much is going to look like. Adam, again, will be joining us later on towards the end of things. And so let's go ahead and get started with the tarot card of the week, the Devil. It's card number 15 of the Major Arcana. I have 6 different links in my podcast notes that I sourced all of this information from. So if you're curious about any of that, that would be the place to go to check that out, and that'll be linked in the description. It's always up there near the top, and those will always be there. If you want to go through and skim the preset written content, I guess you would say, that I set up for the podcast in these podcast notes, those are all up on my website as well. But for the card 15, the Devil, we're going to be going over the history of the Devil card, which is going to include an explanation as to who the character or the figure of Baphomet is and what that all stands for, the history of where it came from. We're also going to talk a little bit about the mythological figures of Pan and Dionysus, how this is a subversion of the Lover's card, and then we'll get into description and symbolism, which will go over various historical versions of the deck throughout history, how it's evolved through time, or the card, I should say. And then, of course, the modern take on the Rider-Waite-Smith general card. The interpretation and meaning, we have a couple of different takes. Of course, A.E. Waite and his drama, and then some more modern ones. For pop culture, we were going to talk Marvel Tarot, which is the Ian McNee notebook, which is by David and Doug Sexton from 2007. DC Tarot by Sarah Richard is one that is unlicensed, I believe. I'm not sure when it was created, but it has all of the cards, every single card is a character, whereas the Justice League Tarot by Casey Gilley That one is licensed officially by DC, and it only has the face cards, so the major arcana, and then the trump cards, page through king of the rest of the deck. And of course, we'll talk the Anime Tarot by Natasha Iglesias, as we always do, and a little bit of JoJo, and I think that I've done pretty good in finding a good summary for this card. So let's go ahead and start in with history. The Bible mentions the devil numerous times, but never describes his physical appearance, so medieval artists inspired by classical art and local folklore were free to fill in the details themselves. Our concept of the devil is very much a product of medieval Christian imagination. The first and last books of the Bible present the devil as a snake or a dragon. Chapters 3, 1 through 5 of the book of Genesis tells the familiar story of the snake in the Garden of Eden, tempting Eve to disobey God. The snake is not called evil, nor is it identified with the devil. The Bible says only that the serpent was more subtle than any beast, but an evil snake-like creature features prominently in the last book of the Bible. The book of Revelations tells the story of St. Michael fighting the dragon and casting him out of heaven. Chapter 12 relates that Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan, who deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out upon the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. The Archangel Michael spearing a dragon was a very popular theme in medieval art, which culminated in Renaissance masterpieces by Raphael, Paolo, and Dürer. The story of Michael, the archangel, casting the dragon out of heaven brings us to the angel Lucifer experiencing the same fate. In the medieval folklore, Lucifer is identical to Satan and often depicted as King Kong monster, the ruler of hell, tormenting and eating the sinners God sends him at the last judgment. The devil does not appear in 15th century hand-painted decks. The speculation that these cards were omitted in courtly, custom-made decks because they were too unpleasant, but numerous cards are missing in all of these early decks, so that actually may not be significant. During the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century and the Church's reactionary Counter-Reformation, religious wars consumed Europe, with both sides demonizing the other. The obsession with heresy on both sides of the religious divide increased the public's enthusiasm for witch hunts. The newly emerging middle class devoured inexpensive, mass-produced prints depicting witches' sabbaths, orgies, and witch burnings. There are a couple of different takes on who the figure, or what the identity of the figure on the card of the devil actually is. So the first one is kind of a crossover of Pan, the gods, mythological gods Pan and Dionysus. So it says, perhaps the most misunderstood card of all the major arcana, the devil is not really, quote, Satan at all. And this is just somebody's take, just mind you. But Pan, the half-goat nature god, and or Dionysus, Bacchus. These are gods of pleasure and abandon, of wild behavior and of unbridled desires. Sometimes, this card says, it is good to dance with Bacchus, surrendering control, or be Bacchus and manipulate. Too much restraint can hold you back and keep you from achieving important things. The Tarot History website had more of a step back take on the explanation of it possibly being Pan or Dionysus, so here is their take and their explanation on that. As we move into the 19th century and occult modifications to the devil card, the devil acquires more goat-like features, inspired by the god Pan and the satyrs in classical art. Pan was the god of forest and wilderness. Satyrs spent their days in the forest drinking, dancing, and chasing nymphs. They were paragons of sensuality and self-indulgence, whose habits horrified good Christians. Pan and the satyrs were related to the Etruscan god of the underworld, Charon, depicted at various times with a goatish or monster-like face, angel wings, tusks, pointed ears, and serpents in his hair. All of these attributes can be found in tarot devils. Now, basically the other most popular explanation as to who the devil is being portrayed as the main figure in the devil card would be Baphomet, which is a pretty notorious figure, I think, these days. This is the backstory for Baphomet. Basically, he comes from the forced torture confessions of the Knights Templar during the Spanish Inquisition. So to expand on that a little bit, the Knights Templar were a religious order of knights formed in 1120 to protect Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land, what we might call the Middle East today, Jerusalem, etc. Thanks to lavish donations of money and land, the Templars became fabulously rich and powerful, possessing extensive land holdings throughout Europe and serving as bankers to the aristocracy. This was all much to the distaste of the royal monarchy and the church, because they were meant to be the two most beloved and powerful entities in the land, not these so-called knights. It was also rather scandalous and dangerous to both the church and the monarchy, again, that the Templars became close with the Muslims in the Holy Land during the Crusades, sharing meals and celebrations together. And so, in 1307, King Philip IV of France destroyed the Templars and confiscated their property. The king justified mass tortures and executions by accusing the Templars of various heresies, including the worship of Baphomet. In their horrific torture, they confessed to Baphomet being anything from a cat to a snake to a man and a woman, all of which clearly shows historically that they were desperately trying to give whatever answers they thought their torturers wanted to hear, not anything that was actually true or worshipped. I had planned to have an excellent selection of text from a certain website that talks about this historical miscommunication, let's say, on where Baphomet came from and how it kind of came to be an entity in mythological figures. Unfortunately, that website is down currently. I am a little bit sad, but I did take some notes on it, thankfully, so I'll go a little bit through my notes, and hopefully it'll make sense to you, because they really do phrase it better on their own site, but I will go through my own notes. It says that the earliest reference to Baphomet, which was actually Baphomet, is an 11th century letter from a crusading knight. A few centuries later, the Knights Templar stood trial for heresy by the Spanish Inquisition on false charges, including the worship of quote-unquote Baphomet. All stories and accounts vastly differ. In historical monuments, Francois Reynard suggests that Baphomet is actually a misspelling of Muhammad. Around the first mention of Baphomet in the 11th century, the name was also spelled Mabumet, M-A-B-U-M-E-T, also Mahomet, M-A-H-O-M-E-T, etc. And also the Templars were likely Gnostics, which is actually something that'll come in a little bit to the more conspiratorial side of these theories later. What I did write, that was an exact take from the site to kind of summarize this. Baphomet was never an idol, demon, god, cult, religion, prophet, or artifact. Baphomet was never anything beyond a typo and a bugbear, except maybe a prejudice. Later on the page, and I wrote this one down too for obvious reasons, they have this summary. Baphomet is the foreigner in the closet, the queer under the bed, the heretic in the crowd. There is no correct Baphomet, because Baphomet is all things that dull minds deem incorrect. And how could you not love that? There is no Baphomet, and so Baphomet will set you free. So there you have it, the pretty much historically accurate explanation as to what Baphomet actually is a misunderstanding. Now, the goat-like Baphomet was a creation of 19th century occultists. We've talked about a couple of these names that we're going to hear before, and how they were a little bit extreme in certain senses, and they took things the wrong way. But anyway, in Chapter 15 of Transcendental Magic by author Eliphas Levi, he embellished the Templar story by saying that the Templars, embellishes the great word there, by saying the Templars confused Baphomet with the god Pan, there we go back to Pan, who is, quote, the god of philosophers, Neoplatonists, Spinoza, Plato, Gnostics, and others. Remember, they were likely Gnostics, so that's why that connection comes in here. The Knights, according to Levi, the Templars didn't realize that they were actually worshipping the devil. Now, it's important to note, there is nothing to back up that claim. It's just that slight connection that they may have been Gnostics, and that Pan is, according to Levi, their god. So that was, it's kind of made up. Kind of just whipped it out of his butt there, but anyway, and it rides on the fact that their confessions were real and honest, and not in any way misreported or misspelled. So after almost 1,000 years, it's doubtful, hundreds of years, no. And so, on the note of it being a subversion, of the Devil card being a subversion of the Lover's card, some do see the Devil card as a parody of the Pope card. Both figures raise their right hands, and both have subordinates in front of them. The Pope's triple cross is mirrored by the Devil's torch, but it's more likely that the Devil card is a sinister version of the Lovers, where a man stands between two women who are reaching for him as they both desire him. At least that's in one version. In the Lover's card, all three figures are the same size. In the 15th century, the Devil looms over two female figures who are bound to him. The women aren't free to leave, but they aren't in distress and may even be enjoying their rather degrading situation. Now that's a different version of the card. That's the pre-Rider-Waite-Smith version of the card. Post Rider-Waite-Smith, their creation of it was basically an angel looking over the lovers below them in the sun. And on the Devil card, it's nighttime, and you have the Devil looking down at could be the two figures, could be lovers, who are chained, and they're symbols of the Adam and Eve in both cards, and it's a lot simpler than this person wanted to make it sound with the women wanting to be subservient. That's somebody's personal fantasy, but okay. Moving on to the card's description and symbolism, which is going to tie into history a lot, because, let's be honest, that's just how these things kind of come to be. In about 1665, Giuseppe Mitelli created a unique tarot deck for the Bentivoglio family of Bologna. It's not Bologna, it's Bologna. His devil sits among the flames of hell, the claws of one foot resting on a demonic snake. The Minciati deck, a tarot with extra trump cards invented in Florence, shows the devil wearing live snakes around his waist. Carlo della Rocca's 1835 Sopraffino deck may have been inspired by Mitelli. This dramatic woodcut version of Della Rocca's design shows the devil with snakes in his hair being pulled into flames by green dragon-like monsters. The most common devil in medieval art, as well as in tarot, is a human-animal hybrid with a hairy body, goat horns, or animal ears, and bird claws for feet. Many of these characteristics appear in later tarot decks. This devil is not the fallen angel Lucifer, nor the monster in hell. He's a mundane, troublemaking demon who leads you astray with temptations and torments you with petty annoyances. When he's mentioned in the New Testament of the Bible, he's described as a liar, deceiver, tempter, rebel against God, and antagonist of Jesus. The earliest printed tarot cards depicts devils that seem mischievous rather than threatening. The face on the belly of the Budapest devil with red angel wings might be strapped on and could be a theater costume. The Rosenwald devil seems to be wearing a costume of leaves or badly drawn fur. Both devils have talons and goat horns and seem rather playful and nonchalant. The Inquisition's two-pronged flail evolved into a trident later in the century. The standard Tarot de Marseille tarot devil has a human body without the fur and other details found in early Italian cards. Rather than goat horns, antlers seem to be attached to a cap, and the cap's brim is folded to look like animal ears. The devil's tongue sticks out. The extravagantly large wings of earlier Tarot de Marseille become graceful bat wings in later decks. The genitals are exposed, making it clear that this is a hermaphrodite with female breasts. In the earlier Dodal tarot deck, the extra face in the belly and eyes in the knees are holdover from Italian cards. The two red bands across the midsection might be a clue to the face that the face is strapped on, like the Budapest tarot devil from earlier. In the Tarot de Marseille decks, the feet are rendered as bird claws. The devil stands on a podium of three colors, usually red, black, and yellow, and possible references to stages in the alchemical process. The devil's trident, or two-pronged flail, looks like rabbit ears in the earlier Tarot de Marseille, possibly because the block carver misread some details. The trident evolved into a torch in later decks. The biggest change from Italian decks is the addition of two minions attached by their necks to the devil's podium. Their antlers and animal ears, like the devil's, seem to be attached by a cap. Both appear female. Their hands are tied behind their backs. Both have long tails. When French and Swiss tarot decks were exported to Italy in the 18th century, Italian printers copied the devil from the Besancon-style decks. Italian devils became more goat-like, with hooves and furry legs. The trident that evolved into a torch in France becomes a tulip in this card. Now, if we might step back into the esoteric whoop-de-woos of the 18 and 1900s. In his 1856 book, Transcendental Magic, good old Eliphas Levi explained the symbolism of this figure, and this was his Baphomet, mind you. The white and black moons represent the correspondence between good and evil, as well as mercy and justice. Solve and coagula on his arms refer to the alchemical distillation process, meaning solvent and combined, while his hands make the sign of esotericism above and below, 2 fingers up and then down. The torch that the Terre de Marseille devil holds becomes a flame on top of the devil's head, indicating the equilibrating intelligence of the triad. Whew, that's a lot of words. The horns are extravagantly long, and his face is very goatish, with a pentagram on his forehead. This devil has hooves rather than talons. Levi tells us that the caduceus over the genitals expresses the mysteries of universal generation. Okay. At one point, he refers to this figure as, quote, the heaven of Mercury, occult science, magic, commerce, eloquence, mystery, and moral force. Dude was into the dramatic. With the emphasis on goat-like characteristics, we can assume Baphomet has furry animal legs and male genitals, making Eliphas Levi's devil a hermaphrodite like the Terre de Marseille's devil. Levi doesn't mention the black angel wings, which for some reason he drew and didn't mention. That's okay. But they could be a reference to the devil or as the fallen angel Lucifer. Moving forward in history a bit, the devil card designed by Swiss occultist Oswald Wirth in the late 19th century combines Levi's Baphomet with the Tarot de Besançon. Someday I'll be able to say that on the first try. The devil has Baphomet's goat head and hooves, but stands on a small podium with 2 attached minions like the Terre de Marseille devil. The 2 figures are very goatish, with horns and ears, hooves, and furry legs, as in the, once again, Besançon, I did it, style tarot. This contrasts with the Terre de Marseille minions with their smooth bodies, antlers, and talons. Wirth designed his card to depict energy circulation. The red minion / satyr raises his arm to draw energy down from the devil, while the green minion returns the energy to the devil via his hand on the devil's foot. Other details indicating energy polarity and circulation are the minion's red and green colors, the Yoni lingam in the devil's left hand, whatever that means, and Solve and coagula on the devil's arms. Wirth says this figure is a hermaphrodite who embodies the union of conscious and unconscious. According to Wirth, the universal life force circulates through all things equally, but it's human nature to hoard this energy. Individuality emerges when we gather this energy around ourselves as if we were the center of the universe. The devil personifies the urge to construct a unique personality by magnetically attracting things to ourselves. Good lord, that feels like a lot of... I'm sure there's some philosopher who was really into that, explaining why those dudes were so into that kind of stuff. Anyway, the founders of the London-based Golden Dawn, and we'll finally get into the modern description after this one, okay? The founders of the London-based Golden Dawn were well acquainted with French occultism, so their devil closely resembles Wirth's design. The devil's goat-like head is enclosed in an inverted pentagram. This configuration was invented by Wirth in the late 19th century and is the official logo of the Church of Satan, founded in 1966 by Anton LaVey. Fun fact, the Church of Satan does not worship Satan. They are actually not even necessarily atheist, but they're like scientific agnostics, so fun fact. While Wirth hints at the fur on the devil's legs, the Golden Dawn's devil is very shaggy. In spite of its pronounced goatish characteristics, the Golden Dawn has bird talons, not hooves. The flame emanating from the top of Baphomet's head have been returned to the torch, which is now inverted. The male and female minions are attached to the podium by their wrists rather than their necks and wear furry skirts. The Golden Dawn's title for this card is actually Lord of the Gates of Matter. Good for them. Now the modern definition, or the modern description. For the generic or modern, what you might call the Rider-Waite-Smith take on the card, the devil has the wings of a vampire bat, an animal that sucks the lifeblood out of its prey, symbolic of what happens when you give in to your raw desires. He has a hypnotic stare which magnetizes and entrances those who come near him, bringing them under his power. Above him is an inverted pentagram, a sign of the darker side of magic and occultism. He raises his right hand in the Vulcan salute, a Jewish blessing later made famous by the film series Star Trek. It's definitely not a Vulcan salute. I don't know why they say that here. In his left hand, he holds a lit torch. At the foot of the devil stands a man and a woman, both naked and chained to the podium on which the devil sits. They appear to be held here against their will, but look closer and you will notice that the chains around their necks are loose and could easily be removed. Each has small horns on their head, like the devil's, a sign that they are becoming increasingly like him in the longer they stay here. Both have tails, a further symbol of their animalistic tendencies and raw instincts, and the grapes and the fire on their respective tails signify pleasure and lust. The bird legs come from Harpy mythology, creatures who swoop down and grab people who are never to be seen again. Moving on now to the interpretation and meaning of the cards. According to A.E. Waite in his book, the devil is ravage, violence, vehemence, extraordinary efforts, force, fatality, that which is predestined but is not for this reason evil. Reversed, evil, fatality, weakness, pettiness, and blindness. A more modern take on this is that upright, the card stands for shadow self, attachment, addiction, restriction, sexuality. Reversed, releasing limiting beliefs, exploring dark thoughts, and attachment. To expand on that just a bit, the devil card represents your shadow or darker side and the negative forces that constrain you and hold you back from being the best version of yourself. You may be at the effect of negative habits, dependencies, behaviors, thought patterns, relationships, and addictions. The devil card often appears when you have been tricked into thinking you have no control over your shadow self and these negative forces, and that you can never break free from their hold. You believe you need and you must have it, even if it means going against what you know to be the right to obtain it. Deep down, though, you know it's to your detriment, and you are only doing yourself and often others a disservice when you cave into those lower needs and desires. To break free of these negative patterns, you need to acknowledge the hold they have on you and the impact they are having upon your life. When the devil shows up in his tarot reading, see it as an opportunity to bring these negative influences into your conscious awareness, so you can take action to free yourself from their hold. Shine your light on the negative patterns that have been standing in your way for so long, and over time, you will loosen the grip that they have on you. On the positive side, the devil card can also show a powerful attachment between two people, such as a mom and her newborn, or a new romance that is still in its honeymoon phase. Be careful, though, because with the devil card, this healthy attachment can turn into an unhealthy, codependent relationship if you lose connection with your inner guidance and don't protect your personal boundaries. Which, frankly, it's just generally good advice there. The devil can also represent sexuality and your wild side. You may be exploring bondage, fetishes, and your deepest, darkest fantasies. If you can do this within a safe, sacred space, it can be a very enriching experience. However, it has the potential to turn into something that may be unsafe or detrimental to your well-being in the long term. So again, set clear boundaries, choose your partners wisely, and have your safe words ready to go. Once again, that's just generally good advice. The pop culture part of this tarot lesson is going to be a little bit longer than usual because I've added a couple of DC Comics references into it. We have our regulars, the Marvel Tarot, the Anime Tarot, quick JoJo reference, but then these two, I've kind of expanded on everything actually, and these two are the new ones. So to start off, in the Marvel Tarot, which is character Ian McNee's Notebook, which is written and created by David and Doug Sexton, circa around 2007. The characters that he has assigned to the Devil card, which is actually two characters that come up alternating Satana and her brother Damon Hellstrom. Fun fact, if you're new to the podcast, I did a Satana Hellstrom special about a year ago for Halloween. I have that Satana Hellstrom, the Devil's Daughter, Satanic Panic, Seduction of the Innocents, the Comics Code, character history, all of that stuff that's relevant to her character. How Chris Claremont is the reason that she kind of was destroyed for a very long time, kind of dropped out of relevance when it was a fantastic start to a character that even the fans and other creators are looking forward to seeing. all of this information I have on that podcast. I did a ton of work and research for it, and I'm super proud of it. So that's going to be linked in the podcast notes. I'll see if I can remember to put it in the description. But that's a podcast if you want to know anything about Satana Hellstrom. Damon's her brother, whatever. And then if you want to know anything extra about Ian McNee, I kind of did a touch of research this week because he is the character who the Marvel Tarot journal belongs to. It's a fictional journal. His background, he was created in the 1980s and is rated only a 3 on the intelligence scale, so I don't think that's super great. He challenged Doctor Strange for the title of Sorcerer Supreme and lost. He came back in the mid to early 2000s, or I guess early to mid 2000s, and appeared in a bunch of those Mystic Arcana one-shots. And then, I guess, at that point, he was gathering and studying magical materials such as the First Tarot, which is the deck that he references in his journal. So there you go. But anyway, McNee, this is what he writes about the 2 characters he has on the Devil card. This first one is Satana, and the next one is Damon. So for Satana, he says, Satana Hellstrom is as unpredictable as a flickering flame. One moment a grand dame demoness cultivating the souls of thousands of suffering victims, the next a street smart sweetheart bad girl, spelled GRRL, heroine. Boy, that aged like milk. She tries on personalities the way some women try on shoes. I can't help but think that every guise teaches her something she needs to know or takes her somewhere she needs to see. She plays a subtler game than her brother, and I think she intends to be the only player left on the board. I also talk about how that's an unfair assessment of her character from this rando dude in that podcast episode about her. So you can check that out to see that assessment. Wow, I think that's unfair. For Damon, he says, I can't say I was surprised to see one of the Satan siblings showing up as a devil card, but surprised they are both making special appearances at about so-so chances. 50-50 chances. Which is also a bit of a surprise. Damon has always been the one to watch and watch out for. Satana is too easily distracted, and that keeps her from becoming a real danger. That's the bit that I was like, that's not really accurate. But, again, I talk about that in the podcast. I have heard rumblings from my spies in the Splinter Realms that there is trouble brewing in the Lake of Fire. Chances are these 2 are a part of it. No idea what that's referencing, but there you go. The DC Tarot now is by Sarah Richard, and it is actually, as far as I can tell, a unauthorized fan-made tarot. The thing that's interesting about it is that it is every single card. Every card is assigned a character, all 72, as opposed to what people normally do, which is the major arcana and then the face cards, the page through the king of wands, cups, swords, or pentacles, or whatever the terminology that they're going to use for their deck is. It's unauthorized. It doesn't seem to be very easy to come across. And then I found a couple of resources that were like the beginnings of fans going through and writing about how these characters related to the card, but then never actually finishing it. I guess they just didn't have the patience for that. 72 of those. But interestingly, for the Devil, she actually puts Lex Luthor. I guess I can kind of see how that will work. The other DC deck that we have is the Justice League Tarot, which is licensed by DC. And that one is written by Casey Gilly, designed, I should say, by Casey Gilly. And the character she assigns to the Devil card is John Constantine. In Constantine, I see a lot more of the kind of 50-50, good side, bad side. A little bit of this is okay, everything within reason. I see a lot more of that in John Constantine, which falls in line with the Devil card, than I do with Lex Luthor. In some episode, when I have very little content to share, I'll go through the previous major arcana cards that we've done for the DC Tarot as well as the Justice League Tarot to explain, talk about what other characters were assigned to those previous cards. So then in the Anime Tarot by Natasha Iglesias, the archetype that she assigns to the Devil card is the Yandere, which I am actually going to do a quick explanation about the Yandere after I read what she has to say about this. She does explain it a little bit herself. She says, the devil's analog in anime is the yandere. Yanderes are usually depicted as girls or women, but they can occasionally be men, who are mentally and emotionally unstable and obsessed with an object of love or affection. Their obsession with a goal or lifestyle has gone too far and become oppressive, turning something that was initially idealistic, destructive, and harmful. The yandere's obsession dominates their actions, terrorizing and tainting the object of their passion. What should be a good thing has, for the yandere, become toxic. The yandere appears she uses the examples of in Inuyasha, both Naraku and Kikyo post-resurrection, in Death Note, Light Yagami, in Fruits Basket, Akito Soma, in Elfin Lied, Lucy, and in Kono Ototomare, Sounds of Life, Akira Dojima. Now, to further explain what a yandere is, I have the official explanation from the Dairy Types wiki, which I cannot believe was a thing. But here we go. Yandere is a Japanese archetype used to define a character whose love, admiration, and devotion is so strong that it is expressed as an excessive obsession and possessiveness. They are often seen as characters that are crazily in love with someone. They become so attached to their love interest that it's impossible to let go. They entrust themselves to their love interest, trusting in their love interest's kindness. They probe the deepest recesses of their love interest's heart so as to more perfectly form their greatest self within their love interest. Some will go as far as to behave in immoral and troubling ways. They will not care about the negative effect that their behaviors can have on others, including their own love interests, because they only care about their own feelings. Finally, in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stardust Crusaders, the stands, or powers for characters, are named after the various tarot cards. The devil's representation is Ebony Devil, a stand with the power to possess inanimate objects when its wielder, minor antagonist Devo, is injured by his opponent's stand. It's all words that probably mean absolutely nothing if you're not familiar with JoJo. That leaves us with what I hope is a mildly poetic summary of all of this information. The contemporary view of this card is rather ambivalent. On one hand, the devil is about succumbing to the lure of addictions, whether drugs, shopping, or chasing after fame. But on the flip side, throwing off repressions and occasionally indulging in forbidden pleasures can feel like liberation. The Jungian devil is an upwelling of one's dark side from deep in the unconscious, resulting in irrational and destructive behavior. But there's treasure buried deep in the psyche, repressed creative energy that wants to burst free into the light of consciousness. Many decks created in the past few decades show a dark side of human nature, people gripped by unconscious forces that rob them of autonomy. The Trip and Wait deck is an homage to the psychedelic 60s. Those times were not all peace, love, and flower power. The Vietnam War, justified by egregious government lies, was a polarizing evil that infected everyone. The Vietnamese people were demonized as subhuman communists, while young people who protested the war were demonized as America-hating communist evil sympathizers. Just as medieval inquisitors justified killing witches because their association with the devil threatened Christian society, so many Vietnamese people and clubbing anti-war protesters was justified because it protected American society from communism. Demonizing those we see as other than ourselves is a continuous thread running through our dealings with the devil. For medieval and Renaissance Christians, anyone who was different, nonconformist, or not a Christian, Jews, Muslims, Cathars, and other heretics, old women, aroused fear and suspicion because they were undoubtedly controlled by the devil. He's controlled by the devil, too. His name's Baphomet. Not even joking, it is. Demonic possession was a handy tool for justifying witch burnings, crusades, and persecutions. Today, we usually don't invoke the devil, but demonizing people we see as other hasn't gone out of fashion. In medieval society, the devil was the enemy of God, an outside force who lured people into disobeying the church's laws. These days, our demons are the internal. Succumbing to temptations and indulging in too much of anything, from chocolate to heroin, is often seen as a character flaw, a weakness that one should be able to overcome. Those who can't control their inner demons are literally demonized and cast out from society to live on the streets. Who or what do you demonize? We're going to talk some comic books, things that came out in the past week or so. that I've caught up on, and that'll include the Night Terrors event and a little bit of the Fall of X. Starting off with Joker 1 Operation Joker number 3. This is the Japanese manga DC comic turned English. Really funny. This issue brings in Johnny Frost, who is the legendary right-hand man of the Joker. Joker doesn't have any makeup on. It's a whole hilarious thing about like coming in and witnessing, the mom taking care of the newborn. It's basically what it was. Baby burps and he says, "That was a beautiful burp, little guy." It reminds me a lot of The Way of the House Husband in the way that it's written, actually. And then Johnny Frost hits the universal sore spot of someone who is raising a baby, which is making it sound like it's so easy when you're not the one who's actually doing all the work. Next issue is going to be about daycare, so that'll be interesting. More issues. We have Amazing Spider-Man Annual, which was good. But the art was really inconsistent and all over the place. Writing was very well done. They toned down Maddie's costume on some panels, but then in other panels it was basically like a thong, so that's what I mean, it was inconsistent. Janine, who is of course Hollow's Eve, she almost rescues Ben, who is Chasm, trapped in the Limbo Embassy in New York. Maddie casts out anybody there who doesn't belong, and that gets rid of Spider-Man, who is also there. And also Janine. Ben is sent back into his cell, and then there's a second story about MJ's aunt going nuts because of the Krakoan pills and the Hellfire Gala bullshit. And that was that. JSA number 5, Justice Society of America. I was a little confused about this one because it straight up says that she erased her own future and her future doesn't exist. So does that mean that they're really going to do the thing of, yeah, even though Tom King did Batman Catwoman, we're not going to make Helena a thing, and we're not going to make Bruce and Selena actually a couple again. Sorry. Dark Droids number 1 I did end up reading, and it was actually really good, if a bit wordy. Charles Soule does Star Wars really, really well, and it continues through this issue for sure. Dark Droids is actually an event, I believe. I will not be keeping up with anything but this Dark Droids line, specifically. Grimm number 12, we have the lady who betrayed them all in the last issue to free the End, gets killed by the End to absolutely nobody's surprise. I don't know who told her that she was going to get something out of it, but they obviously lied. And then there's more backstory of the main character's mom, which is all a little interesting, if a little cliche. I don't know, we'll kind of see how it goes as we learn more. Adventures of John Kent number 6. This is the last issue before the series returns in November, post-Nightfall. And this was really odd because it was the Injustice universe, right? And in that world, John has popped up and everybody knows who he is, and he may have been, the kid who was killed by the Joker and Harley when tricked Superman into thinking that it was Doomsday, but it was pregnant Lois, the whole thing. How Injustice started. So, in the last issue, they found the rebels, so Batman and Harley and everybody, and so they're going to do public executions at the Hall of Justice of the two of them, and obviously, John isn't going to let that happen, so he shows up, and it's just this cool blue power suit thing that he's got going now, which I had to do a little bit of reading up on to understand what was happening, but I guess it's just some kind of thing where back in the 80s or 90s or whatever, Superman got wiped, his powers got wiped, and then what replaced it was pretty much electric powers, and they called it Electric Blue. So John pretty much has that now, except I don't think he has to lose his powers to get there. And the suit turns blue when he uses those powers. I think it's cool, but anyway. So he obviously stops them from getting executed, or it's in the process of stopping them from getting executed by talking to his otherworldly would-be father. Basically says, "You're not Superman, and I wouldn't have been your kid because Superman was my father, and so obviously you're not Superman because of everything. So it wouldn't have been me; it would have been somebody else. So blah blah blah." He's basically talking him into stepping down and facing up for what he's done. When Cyborg shoots John with a multiverse gun, it sends him back to his own reality. Very blunt. And then, of course, John arrives in chaos in Metropolis, so good stuff. I think he's back in the right world, I'm not sure. Doctor Strange number 6 is a bit of a filler issue, and by a bit I mean entirely. basically explaining backstory that Stephen fought for the Vishanti for 5,000 years, to the point that the enemy decided they just wanted peace, and he was like offended by that, so the Vishanti separated the warmonger side of him that was fighting for 5,000 years and put that into a little crystal that would be safe and trapped in, and other Stephen will not have any memory of those 5,000 years or knowledge of it. But then, of course, when he dies, the evil Stephen escapes, so that's where we're at now. The Sacrifices number 1 was good, if standard Rick Remender kind of thing. It feels very much along the similar line of what he's done in the past in other series, like Seven to Eternity. It's pretty much exactly what the solicitations all said that it was. It's a world where every family has to sacrifice, I think it's like every generation one child from each family or something like that, to appease their gods. But then there's also the side of it that we've now seen as a really cool metaphor. Kind of a metaphor. It's the sun and the moon have a daughter, and the daughter is, I guess, whoever this main character is going to end up being. But it's kind of the whole thing of, like, the sun goes back to where his throne is and calls out the salamanders, which is a really cool symbol to put in there, because for a long time there's a whole thing about how people thought salamanders came from, like, fire and forges and stuff. So it's really cool that they stuck that in there. The salamanders light up his throne, and that's the sun. And then, well, I guess we'll see the moon probably in the next issue, but that's her mother. Really cool concept for gods. Presumably, he will be eating the sacrifices. I have no idea. We'll see. Fire and Ice number 1 was absolutely of no interest to me, but it was absolutely fantastic for Zeta-style art, and I'm sure story, if people got that far into it. Then the fall at Marvel, we had Magneto number 1, which my note here literally says, flashback story, fuck, never mind. So that's about all I got for that one. And then X-Men 25, focused on Kate Pryde, aka Shadowcat. It looks like Petra Momoko has designed her a Shadowcat suit. She's got her hair cut, and she's back to using the swords that she was trained to use in the Uncanny X-Men days, far and long ago. She can now use the gates, because the gates are turned off, so she can phase through them, which I always figured she should be able to phase through them anyway, but whatever. And it has been 10 weeks from the Hellfire Gala, and shit's not looking any good. So that's about where we're at with the fall. For Night Terrors, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number 2 of 2 for these character 2-shots. So for Batman, he was dreaming again because Deadman has taken over his body. He gets to chat with Kid Bruce and make it right in the end, and may or may not have woken up. We're not sure. Backup story with Black Canary and, Red Cocaine Boy. Red Arrow, whatever they call him now. Joker, issue 2, he becomes Batman, basically. He has a kid called Albert with Lena Luthor, which is a weird one. He convinces himself he didn't kill Batman, and then wakes up, like IRL, yelling that we need Batman. Poison Ivy issue 2, Janet, or whatever her name was, Janie, whatever it was, she ends up helping Ivy face her fears, and I guess they'll maybe wake up. Ravager was a bunch of scary nightmare stuff, and then Black Adam was Deadman Batman comes to him and tells him that there are thin places in the dream realm, and so that's how he's able to go through and talk to people who are dreaming, and gives him the details, and that's pretty much where that has landed us. New in comics this week, these are going to be comics coming out August 8th and 9th of 2023. For a couple of number 1s is Comic Books Kill and Met Cadets. We have Superman 2023 Annual, Captain Marvel Dark Tempest number 2, The Avengers number 4, as well as Silk and Spirit World numbers 4. Then at night, for Night Terrors at DC, we have the main line, Night Terrors number 3, and then issues 2 of 2 for the 2-shot spin-offs for Green Lantern, Robin, Shazam, The Flash, and Zatanna. Over at Marvel for the fall, we're kicking off Immortal X-Men number 14 and Children of the Vault number 1. And now we have Adam joining us for the remainder of the episode, which is going to cover TV, movies, and anime, which is mostly actually just going to be us talking about anime voiceovers and SAG-AFTRA unions, Harley Quinn, and Strange New Worlds. Hi, Adam.
Hi.
Okay, so it was something that I brought up last night about why are these animes not getting delayed the way that regular shows are getting delayed due to the SAG-AFTRA strike. And the answer to that is basically the majority of anime voice acting jobs, if not all of them, I think the exceptions are stuff like maybe Netflix, are not union. There is no union option for them. SAG is Screen Actors Guild, of course. AFTRA is, I just read it was the American Film, Television, and Radio Artists or Association. Both of those back in the early or mid-90s, I read up on this, okay, they turned down adding anime voice actors to their ranks because they didn't see it as a market. And while that's kind of changed a little bit because you're getting things like, the example that I read about was Big Mouth on Netflix, where you have a ton of very well-known SAG-AFTRA unionized actors who are now doing the voiceovers for that. So that's where you get like, okay, so it's a little bit different than shows that are just getting recorded to be put on Crunchyroll. You have a massive gap of difference between how everything is run for those. And why this is relevant now is because I would say this is going to be the next big push for unionization in media, or media creation, or entertainment, however you want to say it. Because you can just look up anime union issues, or anime, I guess you could look up like voice actor issues in anime, and you get so many articles. I have the first 3 that I clicked on basically are talking about the push for unionization, and in the anime voice actor community is like a mob mentality because they're getting kind of desperate for it. The second one I read was about how the voice actors in like for places like Crunchyroll and Funimation and things like that, they don't get the like union jobs because the union doesn't work with them. And then so the third article about unpaid wages and how unpaid wages for months at a time is a very common thing to have happen to voice actors in anime. So this is definitely something that's going to have to be resolved in the next, I would say, 3 years maximum, because we're getting already anime delays, not for union issues, but for specifically non-union issues of being overworked and having to cover so many jobs because the pay is so little, and because that's their only way of getting any kind of recognition in the industry.
And then, kind of to backpack off what you were saying, and is a great segue to like the overworking and the conditions that a lot of these animators have to do. There was a joke online that I saw people talking about the Mappa Animation Studio. They're making Jujutsu Kaisen, Hell's Paradise, and Chainsaw Man. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 was like 20-something episodes, like top tier, and they had a martial artist who actually works in the team, like, map everything out. And they did Chainsaw Man, and then Hell's Paradise is like, 13 episodes as well? Like, they did all of these, and these all came out within the last, like, year altogether as well. So it's like, just imagine that workload, because, like, if you've watched any of those, you know that, like, those aren't rushed animation shows. Like, there's a lot of time into that, so I can only imagine, like, how much those MAPPA people are working so hard right now.
Yeah, it's not just the voice actors. Just like how in Hollywood, it's not just the actors who get affected when SAG-AFTRA has to strike. It's the makeup artists. It's the cam guys. It's the, what do they call it?
Set designers, yeah.
Best boy, the one that you always see in the credits, best boy or whatever, who holds the mic. And it's the same thing in animation, where it's not just going to be the voice actors who are affected. It's the people who are creating the thing at all, really, which in animation is animators. And it's obviously hugely different than, like, Disney, because Disney's obviously going to be working with all kinds of unions when they're getting stuff for their animated movies. But then you get all of these originally Japanese companies or stories or whatever you want to call it, who are coming here and they're getting... and it's actually not just the English, it's obviously the animation companies are going to be, language doesn't really affect what the animation looks like, but it's the English animation voice actors as well as in Japanese. It's not just, unfortunately, an American issue. It's something that the industry as a whole has kind of started taking advantage of. And part of me kind of feels like they're doing it so hard now, like we're hearing about it a lot right now, because they're seeing the way that things are going to start playing out. The fact that they're going to have to probably cut back on all of these shortening of corners and such that they're doing, shaving corners down and trying to make things work within their, whatever minuscule budget they give the actors or whatever it is. I feel like they see the writing on the wall for what's happening in Hollywood now and that they're next, and that's why they're going so hard at trying to penny pinch and, for lack of a better term, be a dick to their workers.
Yeah, it's so the original meme was it was like you enjoying your favorite animes, and it was like, Jujutsu Kaisen, all them made by MAPPA, and then it's like the MAPPA studio salarymen who haven't seen their family in 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's something it's complicated because it's international, but it's definitely going to have to be addressed. And maybe, maybe if that starts to get addressed overseas, maybe they'll start to address their going deeper. What was the term you just used? Salarymen issues.
Oh yeah, salarymen, yeah.
Overwork of salarymen issues. So that's a whole cultural thing that you hear about all the time about for Japan. So that's, who knows? Maybe it'll snowball and the whole world will start treating each other better. So that brings us to the shows of the week. First off, Harley Quinn Season 4, Episode 4. This is quite a long title. The first person to come back from a business conference without chlamydia. There is a lot of, I guess there's always a lot of sexual jokes in this, but this one I felt like, was just over the top with, like, it was not in a bad way, just it was really funny that, the spaceship she rode to, was Ivy is going to a conference on on the moon, with Lex Luthor's conference, and she wants to get the business contact info, for Steppenwolf, because he's like the best businessman in the universe, is how they all kind of play it off to. And then Lex Luthor is just jealous of her the whole time, and this whole thing of her losing her voice and she can't give the speech, and Lex Luthor busts his calves open because he can't have weak calves, so he has calf pumps on, and it's like, that's the Ivy side of things. Rode the dick and ball spaceship up to the moon. And then on the Harley side of things, first off, loved her outfit. The pink and blue Harley Quinn Bat Family suit is my new favorite Bat Family suit. It was Talia. Talia came in and takes all their money. Basically because she owns Wayne Enterprises now that Bruce is in jail, I think is what it is, right?
Yeah, he's in jail.
And so she took all their money and they rent out Wayne Manor as an Airbnb. But then it turned out they all hated the Europeans who rented out the Wayne Manor Airbnb, and that turns out they're villains anyway, which was just really funny. And Harley's the only one who could fight them because they're all used to fighting with their bat tools, so they all suck. Really funny stuff. Anything to add for the episode?
Yeah, I like the depiction of Talia in this. It's extremely accurate to comic Talia. Like when she sees Damien, she's like, "Oh yeah, here's your birthday present." He's like, "My birthday was 5 months ago," and he opens it up. It's an infant rattler. Very much how she thinks and looks at them and then her kid in general. And then he's like, "I'm not a kid anymore. I have rock hard abs." And she goes, "Oh really?" And just gut punches him, and he falls over and goes, "Oh mom, why?" Perfectly accurate Talia to how she treats Damien and then her demeanor. And then they make a joke about something she was intimidating somebody, and they're like, "You just like being with weak men," and then it kind of cuts to a flashback of Bruce asking her for something. And so funny. I love how they play off Bruce just being the submissive guy, even though he's supposed to be Batman. It works so well.
It goes along with the show, yeah.
It really does. And then I loved, of course, the penis spaceship is a definitely jab at Bezos, and it seems like that's kind of what more or less Lex Luthor is in this. Yes.
Although they did have Elon Musk at the conference. He died.
Yeah, and I was gonna. Yeah, I love the fact that so Harley, in turn, trying to get FaceTime with Steppenwolf. She's just not Harley, but Ivy, just trying to show that she's a villain. So throughout the episode, you see her just doing these maniacal evil things. My two favorite things is she kills Elon Musk, and then she Zuckerberg's like out in space and they're like mountain
Doing a
climb.
spacewalk or something.
Yeah, they're doing a spacewalk, and she just clips his thing, and he just goes floating off. And then later on in the episode, they're like, "Has anybody seen Zuckerberg?"
Jokes about the uber wealthy never get old.
Yes. Yeah.
So then Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 9 was Subspace Rhapsody. I should have known it from the title. It was a musical episode. How do we feel about musical episodes, Adam?
I'm not the biggest fan of musicals in general. It was really funny, like, kind of ended, it starts off like a normal, New Worlds episode. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, have you tried playing a song to it? And then they go the song to it, and then the shockwave comes back. And then I look at you and I go, this is a musical, isn't it? And then she goes, yeah.
I don't have an issue with musicals if they're supposed to be like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, great show. It's obviously was meant to have the musical numbers in there. But whenever it's like they did it on the CW Arrowverse shows every now and then, I just was never a fan of that kind of thing. I think they did it like back in Once Upon a Time on ABC. ABC and the CW, notorious with musical episodes. And I guess Strange New Worlds is probably in some way, Paramount probably connected to the same people who make those kinds of episodes. And the one thing that kind of saved it, I guess, was the fact that they weren't, like, just happy-go-lucky going around singing for no reason. It was like, they were all very much aware that they could not stop singing and dancing, and they did not like it, but they just had to let it happen so that they could finish. The whole thing was like, they have to wrap up the musical with a big finale number at the end. So fine, whatever. I didn't like it.
I loved how Pike, you could tell the whole time Captain Pike was extremely uncomfortable with all this. And so, like, he would just kind of, like, you would see him, like, watching people, and then he would, like, he knew that if he started to speak, he would start singing, so, like, he would make it very pointed. At first, he would just say, like, 1 or 2 word answers, and he was like, yes, okay. And then as he tried to explain it, he broke out into it. He did a really great job of acting of, like, I don't want to do this, but I have to do it, which I kind of thought was funny. It's like, oh, he's almost someone in the audience who doesn't like musicals, but it was a funny thing to do with it. It wasn't miserable for me to watch.
Yeah, it wasn't miserable. I just wasn't a fan of the concept.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
One thing I wish they had played with more. They did it only one time, and I really wanted them to do it more. Was when when Pike takes the video call from his lady friend, who's also in the command, and the two of them start seeing their issues at each other in front of everybody, but they can't stop. So La'an comes up and shuts off the video feed, and therefore the song is forced to end. I really wish they had kind of shown a few other bits of, like, somebody walks into the room and turns the lights on and everybody snaps out of it, like something like that a couple more times. That would have been really funny, because I liked the ability to trigger it to end like that. You can trigger it to start with the emotional moments, but you can trigger it to end by snapping out of it, which I wish they had done a little more of, but they didn't. That's fine.
I did appreciate how they teased us more with the La'an and Kirk.
Yes, how she straight up tells him all of that.
That was so, because I was like, man, God,
I didn't think she was going to actually do that.
Because that episode low-key crushed me, because, like, I said before, her and Mbenga have slowly become my favorites of this series, because she's more of, like, I'm security, so I have to have this layer and not get close with any of my colleagues or anyone in general. And then, I mean, come on, it makes sense that Kirk's goofy ass would be the one. And this is him, like, pre-captain, too, so he's still, like, very much green in a way. Yeah. And so it's really fun to see him, like, have that experience with her, and then he does not want her to forget about, you owe me a drink. But yeah, I love it that she just straight up told him, because it was, like, a lot of us, like, just say it, man, come on.
And then he says that he has a girlfriend named Carol.
Yeah.
I think he made that up. I bet you any money we're going to see that he made that up.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how or why, but...
There'll probably be something that to get us going and get invested in this will they or won't they romance they have.
Yeah. Anything else about the episode?
No, yeah, besides the musical thing, I'm very much enjoying A Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you for, like, getting me into it, because this is the first Trek I've, like, been heavily invested into since watching Next Generation as a kid with my parents. So it's good to get back into that Trek feel again.
Yes, we are not Trekkies, though. We are just Star Trek fans.
Yeah, just casual Trek fans. Yeah, I'll never, disrespect the real Trekkies and call myself that. If anything, I love to listen to you guys explain things to me. Especially, I love it when they explain the timelines, because as somebody who's a huge Star Wars nerd, I can be like, this timeline happens here. I can't do that as much with the Trek stuff, so I love listening to them explain it.
Yes, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, this coming week is the finale episode.
Oh, okay.
I believe episode 10, if I'm not mistaken. So, sad that it's already over, but it's been a fun... I feel like it went by so fast.
It did, yeah.
But, oh well, that's what happens when you only have 10-episode seasons, because people probably aren't funded the way they meant to be. But anyway...
Yeah.
We'll be back next week with a new episode, new comics, new shows to talk about. And I believe my next tarot card to go over is the Tower. I happen to know the Marvel Tarot correspondence with that is Patsy Walker, so I'll have plenty to say about that one.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I think that's pretty much it, yeah. Check out our Discord if you want to join us there, or follow us on Instagram, which we sometimes use. Otherwise, we'll see you in about a week. Stay cool, stay sweaty, and don't be an asshole.